Look at the world from above. Before satellites, before airplanes, before drones, who was viewing the world from this angle? Scattered across our planet, in every continent, hidden in forests, buried under cities, and sitting on coastlines, are the star forts. Perfect, complex geometric shapes. 5 points. 6 points. 12 points. Fractals of stone and water. Historians have a simple explanation. They call them Bastion Forts. They tell us that in the 16th and 17th centuries, military engineers designed these intricate shapes to deflect cannonballs. They tell us that the geometry is purely tactical. But pause for a moment. Look at the complexity. Look at the fractal nature of the walls. Does this look like a bunker? Or does it look like something else? If you show these shapes to an electrical engineer, they don't see a fort. They see a circuit board. They see a capacitor. If you show these shapes to a sound engineer, they don't see defense walls. They see frequencies. They see cymatics, sound made visible. Why would you build a defensive wall that requires millions of extra bricks to create complex fractals, when a straight wall is easier to build and easier to defend? Why are there star forts in places where no wars were fought? Why are they found in the middle of nowhere? What if these were not built to keep people out? What if they were built to pull energy in? Welcome back to the investigation. Today, we turn on the grid. The official narrative tells us that this style of architecture, the Tres Italienne, originated in Italy and spread through Europe. But if you dig into the archives, the timeline falls apart. We find star forts in Japan, in India, in the Americas, in Africa, in the desolate steppes of Russia. They are everywhere. And they are identical. The precision is terrifying. Consider the star fort in Naarden, Netherlands, or the Fort Jefferson in Florida, or the Goryakaku in Japan. The geometry is perfect. To lay out a shape like this on the ground, without aerial surveillance, without GPS, requires a level of geodetic knowledge that supposed primitive armies did not possess. You would need to survey the land with laser precision. 1 degree off, and the star does not close. The symmetry breaks. And the sheer volume of earth that had to be moved. Take Fort Jefferson. It sits in the middle of the ocean, 70 miles from the coast. It is made of 16 million bricks. 16 million. Shipped to a remote island. In the 1800s. Who laid these bricks? Where are the kills? Where are the ships? The official story says it was never finished. That is their favorite excuse. It was abandoned. Perhaps it wasn't abandoned. Perhaps it was deactivated. We are looking at a unified, global civilization. A civilization that had a blueprint for the entire planet. They didn't just build cities, they wired the earth. And the star forts were the nodes. Let's dismantle the cannonball theory. We are told that the pointed walls were designed so that cannonballs would glance off them, and to eliminate blind spots for musket fire. But look at the cross-section of a star fort. They are often surrounded by water. Moats. Water is the enemy of a foundation. If you are building a heavy stone wall, the last thing you want is to surround it with water, unless you have advanced waterproofing technology. And from a defensive standpoint, the complex geometry actually creates more surface area to defend. It requires more soldiers to man the walls. And then there is the material. Many of these forts are made of red brick. Have you ever fired a cannonball at a brick wall? It shatters. It crumbles. If you wanted to stop a cannonball, you would use earthworks. Dirt absorbs impact. Brick transmits shock. These structures were not designed to absorb impact. They were designed to resonate. Look at the centers of these forts. Often, there is a massive tower, or a cathedral, or a water plant, the citadel. If this is a military base, why put a giant, fragile tower in the center? Unless the tower is the antenna, and the star walls are the collection dish. This is where the physics of the old world comes alive. Cymatics is the study of visible sound. If you place sand on a metal plate and play a specific frequency, the sand arranges itself into geometric patterns. Beautiful, complex, symmetrical stars. Look at the frequency of 432 Hz. Look at the pattern it creates. Now look at an aerial photo of Palmanova in Italy. It is a match. It is an exact match. The star forts are literally frozen music. They are stone structures built to the harmonic proportions of specific frequencies. Why? Because the Earth itself rings. The Schumann resonance. The heartbeat of the planet. The builders of the old world understood that the Earth is a generator. The atmosphere is positively charged. The ground is negatively charged. If you build a structure that resonates with the Earth's frequency, and you use conductive materials, red brick, which contains iron and silica, and water, you create a flow of electrons. These forts were not bunkers. They were power plants. They harvested the etheric energy from the ionosphere and the telluric currents from the ground. The shape itself amplified the energy. Just like a crystal focuses light, the star fort focused electromagnetic waves. They were the batteries of the grid. Notice the water. Almost every star fort is built on water, near water, or has a complex system of moats and canals. Fort Bourtange. The Peter and Paul Fortress. The Statue of Liberty, which sits on a star fort. Water is a conductor. Salty water is an even better conductor. Historians say, it's a moat for defense. But you can swim across a moat. It's not a great defense. However, in electrical engineering, water is essential for grounding and for electrolysis. What if these star shapes were used to condition the water? We know that water has memory. We know that water structure changes when exposed to magnetic fields and frequencies. Was the water in these moats charged? Was it healing water? Or was it part of a massive hydroelectric system that didn't require dams? A system that used the natural flow and the shape of the banks to generate a vortex? Look at the diagrams of magnetrons inside your microwave. Look at the cross-section of a high-voltage cable. They look exactly like star forts. We are living on a giant motherboard. The components are still there, but the wires have been cut. The water has been drained or stagnated. The towers have been toppled. But the footprint remains. If you open a textbook on military architecture, one name dominates the page: Sebastien Le Priester de Vauban, a French military engineer under Louis XIV. We are told that this one man is responsible for designing, building, or upgrading nearly 300 star forts across Europe. 300. Let's do the math on that. Vauban was active for about 40 years. To build or significantly upgrade 300 massive stone complexes, each requiring millions of bricks, years of earth moving, and intricate hydrological engineering, he would have to complete a new fortress every 45 days. In the 17th century, without cars, without phones, without computers, traveling by horse-drawn carriage on muddy roads from one end of France to the other. He would have to survey the land, draw the blueprints, hire the thousands of workers, source the stone, and oversee the construction of a megastructure every month and a half. For 40 years straight. This is not history. This is mythology. Vauban was not the builder. He was the cataloger. He was the man sent by the new regime to inspect the ruins they had found. He didn't design the stars. He simply claimed them for the king. He put his name on the reset inheritance. Attributing these global structures to one man is the easiest way to stop you from asking questions. Who built this? Vauban built it. Case close. But the math exposes the lie. Once the new controllers took over these power plants, they had a problem. They had massive structures filled with pipes, valves, underground chambers, and water systems. They couldn't explain what they were for. So, in many cities, they rebranded them. They called them gasworks. Or water treatment plants. Look at the old maps of London, Berlin, or New York. Look for the circular structures often found inside or near star forts. They call them gasometers. We are told they were built to store coal gas for street lamps. But look at the architecture of a Victorian gasometer. Intricate ironwork. Greek columns. Beautiful domes. Why would you build a Greco-Roman temple to store toxic gas? Unless the structure was already there. Unless the gasworks narrative was a cover story for the existing technology found on site. These facilities were processing something. But it wasn't coal gas. It was likely the etheric energy harvested by the star fort, converted into a plasma state, and distributed through the city. When the knowledge was lost, the parasitic system repurposed the pipes. They pumped dirty coal gas through a system designed for clean energy. They turned a healing machine into a pollution machine. Not all star forts were turned into tourist attractions or gasworks. Some were simply buried. But you cannot hide a structure that is miles wide. You can't just bulldoze it. So, you terraform it. Go to Google Earth. Look at some of the world's most exclusive golf courses. Look at the mounds, the sand traps, the water hazards, strange, geometric shapes, sharp angles covered in grass. Why do so many golf courses have ancient ruins or historic walls incorporated into their design? Why is the landscape so radically uneven? There is a theory that many golf courses are simply terraformed star forts. They covered the stone walls with a layer of soil, planted grass, and called it a leisure sport. It is the perfect camouflage. You fence it off. You charge a membership fee. You make it private property. And the elite walk on top of the ruins of the old world, playing a game, while the technology sleeps beneath their feet. The green mounds of North America. The strange hills in the middle of flat cities. We are literally walking on top of the roof of the previous civilization. They didn't remove the evidence. They just threw a green blanket over it. Finally, we must understand that the Star Fort was not an isolated building. It was the CPU, the central processing unit, of a much larger motherboard. The city itself. Look at the street layout of Washington, D.C. Look at Paris. Look at La Plata in Argentina. The streets radiate out from the center like spokes on a wheel. They intersect at precise angles, 33 degrees, 45 degrees. They form pyramids, owls, and stars. Historians say, it's just grand urban planning. But electricity follows the path of least resistance. If you are broadcasting energy wirelessly from a central tower, an obelisk, or a dome, you need the streets to act as waveguides. The avenues lined with iron lampposts, the red brick buildings lining the streets, the tram lines embedded in the ground. This was the circuit. The Star Fort generated the frequency. The water amplified it. The tower broadcast it. And the street grid distributed it. It was a wireless, free energy ecosystem. Living in these cities kept you healthy. It kept the plants growing. It kept the vibration high. We are still living in the machine. But the power is off. We are like ants living inside a computer that has been unplugged. We crawl along the circuits, unaware of the data that once flowed through them. We have talked about the construction of these forts. Now we must talk about their destruction. In Scotland, in France, in Turkey, there are ruins known as Vitrified Forts. Walls made of granite and basalt that have been melted. Not burned. Melted. To melt granite, you need a temperature of over 1,200 degrees Celsius, 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Sustained for a long period. A wood fire cannot do this. A siege burning down a castle cannot do this. The stones have fused together into a glass-like substance. Historians try to tell us that ancient people did this on purpose. They call it constructive strengthening. Think about that. They want you to believe that primitive tribes piled wood against their own walls and set them on fire to make them stronger. Fire makes stone brittle. It cracks it. It doesn't strengthen it. Vitrification is not a building technique. It is a crime scene. These forts were not destroyed by conventional warfare. They were hit by high-energy plasma weapons. Whatever war ended the old world, the war that preceded the mud flood, it involved weaponry that could turn stone into liquid. We look at the craters in star forts that are labeled meteor impacts. Are they meteors? Or are they scars from an orbital bombardment? The silence of the vitrified fort screams of a technology we are not allowed to know about. If you still think these are just military bunkers, look at Fort Jefferson. It sits in the Dry Tortugas, 70 miles west of Key West, Florida, in the middle of the ocean. It is composed of 16 million red bricks. The official story says the U.S. Army built it in the mid-1800s to protect the shipping lanes. Protect them from whom? Pirates? With a massive stationary brick castle? Let's look at the shipping manifest. 16 million bricks. Where did they come from? They had to be shipped by boat. In the 1850s, a standard barge could carry maybe a few thousand bricks. You would need thousands of trips through hurricane-infested waters. And fresh water. There is no fresh water on that island. You would have to ship millions of gallons of water just to mix the mortar. And for what? The fort was never finished. It was obsolete before it was done. The cannon shutters were never installed. Why build the largest brick structure in the Western Hemisphere in the middle of the ocean if it serves no strategic purpose? Unless it wasn't a fort. It sits on a ley line. It sits in a powerful current of water. Was Fort Jefferson a relay station? An oceanic energy harvester located on a specific node of the Earth grid? The narrative of military incompetence is used to cover up the narrative of technological impossibility. What happens when you expose plants to strong electromagnetic fields? They grow. They grow fast, and they grow huge. This is a known phenomenon called electroculture. Now, look at the photographs from the late 19th century and early 20th century. The state fair photos. We see cabbages the size of men. Pumpkins that weigh a ton. Grapes the size of apples. We are told these were prize-winning anomalies. But what if this was the norm in the old world? If the star forts were generating an atmospheric charge, creating a greenhouse effect of energy across the land, everything would grow larger. The soil would be supercharged. The water would be structured. Food was abundant. Scarcity did not exist. When the grid was turned off, the plants shrank. We are eating the dwarf versions of the food our ancestors ate. We rely on chemical fertilizers, Monsanto, etc., to force the ground to produce, because the natural energetic driver, the etheric current, has been severed. They destroyed the star forts not just to disconnect us from free power, but to disconnect us from free food. To control a population, you must control the food supply. And you cannot control a garden that grows giant vegetables automatically. You might think, well, we don't build star forts anymore. Don't we? Look at the headquarters of the United States military. The Pentagon. A perfect five-pointed star. Nestled inside a pentagram. Why? Why not a square building? Why not a tower? They tell us it's for efficiency. But the Pentagon is a geometric shape associated with summoning, with power, with containment. Is the Pentagon a modern star fort? Are they using the same principles of sacred geometry, but for a different purpose? Instead of broadcasting healing energy, are they broadcasting a frequency of war? Instead of harmony, are they generating control? The elites never stopped using this geometry. They just stopped telling us what it does. They wear the symbols. They build their headquarters in these shapes. They lay out their capitals, Washington, D.C., Brasilia, Canberra, in these grids. They know that shape determines frequency. And frequency creates reality. The star forts of the past were the white magic of the grid. The structures of today might be the inversion. So what happened? Why are they silent now? The mud flood. The reset. When the cataclysm struck, the grid went down. The layer of mud buried the connections. The water channels were clogged. The new inhabitants, us, found these massive stone stars. We didn't know what they were. We saw walls, so we put cannons on them and called them forts. We saw towers, so we put bells in them and called them churches. We occupied the power plant and turned it into a battlefield. But the geometry doesn't lie. You cannot explain Palmanova with defense. You cannot explain the global consistency with coincidence. The star forts are the ultimate proof that a single, scientifically advanced civilization once managed this planet. They knew the language of the universe. They knew that sound, shape, and energy are one and the same. We are walking through their ruins, wondering why the lights won't turn on. Thank you for watching Tartaria Unveiled. Keep your eyes on the ground, and your mind open. Subscribe for the next excavation.